Well, what's up, guys? Today's installment or today's Iran-Israel war update comes about a day and a half after President Trump entered the war by dropping those bunker buster bombs on Fordo, in addition to Isfahan and Natanz. But the story was obviously his bombing. I think he used 12 of these famous bunker busting bombs on Fordo. Now, Steve, why did you wait a day and a half to post your update? Well, because I tend to be one of the more responsible people to wait for the dust to settle literally and to be able to sift through the facts, to separate them from the fiction. And only then do I do these updates, which is why I'm just not as quick to upload after these major events as others who, in my opinion, don't responsibly sift through the facts under their pressure to, race things up to their YouTube channel, to be the first with the story, to maintain their relevance. Okay, so I may not be as quick as others to upload following a major event, but I do feel that I'm responsible, okay? And that's why some of you have chosen to follow me as well, as an addition to those other people. Now, rather than recapitulate the whole entrance of America into the war, because there's plenty of media sources that you have access to that are doing a great job. For those of you that follow me on Facebook, I've uploaded a gift article from the New York Times, which means that you should be able to access it, that goes play by play over how Donald Trump decided to get into this war. While he was at the G7 meeting in Canada, if you recall, he had to leave the meeting. He was warned by Iran that if the United States were to bomb Fordo, Iran would set off sleeper cells of terror, something that we always knew is a possibility because of that open border between the US and Mexico. That open border that for years not only has been exploited by illegal aliens, but also by nefarious people, terror cells, Iranian people from Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda, Chinese intelligence people. That open border, folks. Although President Trump is doing great work in trying to reverse all that, the damage has already been done, okay? In terms of, millions of people have entered that border, among them cells of terrorists who I've always known have been there. And Iran basically told Donald Trump that if you bomb Fordo, we will set them off. Now, Donald Trump, of course, in response, warned Iran that if they do that, then the counterattack of America will go way beyond Fordo and jeopardize the regime itself. To his credit, the attack of America a couple of days ago had nothing to do with regime change, but entirely was about doing away with this Fordo site. And for those that tried to prevent him from getting involved, over threats and warnings that this would turn out to be a forever war in Iraq or forever war like the one in Afghanistan, again, comparing apples to oranges, nobody ever suggested that America should enter this war toward regime change, okay, or boots on the ground. It was always simply about dropping these bunker-busting bombs on Fordo, and that's it. And that's exactly what President Trump did, and hopefully that's where it begins and ends, okay? Now, as far as the update I can give you from here from Israel, well, most of you knew about this attack before I did, okay? I woke up yesterday about 4 hours after that attack on Fordo. My mom and brother had left me text messages saying that, Steve, you're going to wake up to big news. But before I can indulge in that big news, literally the minute after I woke up, sometime around 7 or 7:30 in the morning, the air raid sirens all triggered here because of Iran's counter strike on Israel. And it was one of the largest strikes of the war so far. This was a big strike. How do I know this? Because by the time I was in the bomb shelter, I heard, over a dozen massive explosions above us in the sky. Now, what are these explosions that I'm hearing where I'm at? Especially since the town that I'm in is not the target of these ballistic missiles. Well, I'm basically hearing Israel's interceptors breaking the sound barrier as they race to intercept these incoming missiles that are targeting Tel Aviv, which is only about 30 minutes to the west of here. Okay, Tel Aviv is I can see it from the balcony where I'm at right now. If I go outside right here, I can see Tel Aviv, especially as the sun is setting. Now, what made this particular counterattack of Iran yesterday very interesting, besides its size, okay, was that for the first time, Iran used one of its Khybar missiles. Khybar, that's the name of this particular missile. It has a range of up to 2,000, and forgive me, I'm going to say kilometers because that's how I'm reading it here in the Israeli media. Israel goes by the metric system. I can't stand the metric system. I still love what we use back home in the States called the imperial system. Okay, that's what we call our measurement of pounds and miles. And so, forgive me, but this is how I'm seeing it cited in the media here. 2,000 kilometer range with the ability to carry a 1,500 kilogram warhead. Okay, so in other words, the largest warhead in Iran's arsenal can be carried by that Khyber missile, and it can also carry a nuclear warhead, which thank God they don't have yet. Okay, that's what this whole war is about. But the reason why I'm bringing up the Khyber missile is because of its very name. Now, a couple days ago, I watched a show called The Piers Morgan Uncensored. Piers Morgan is a TV personality from England. He has a show every night on YouTube. Okay, it's a YouTube channel, just like Megyn Kelly of formerly of Fox News. She has her show on, her channel on YouTube. Okay, there are people that have turned to YouTube as their main medium and no longer on the networks. I'm sure Tucker Carlson is one of them. Okay, he's also on Twitter. So on the Piers Morgan show, he's covered this war since October 7, probably more than anybody else. He covers it almost every night. He has major debates on it every night. And he doesn't always have the best guests. They're usually on his show strictly because they're social media influencers with large audiences, which means that Steve the tour guide won't be invited soon because I'm not a big social media influencer. I'm only up to something like, 9,400 subscribers. I'm thankful for every one of you. Okay, thank you for subscribing. But anyway, on the show that I saw a couple of nights ago, he had Franklin Graham, who he interviewed before he had a debate with other people. Franklin then left the show, and some other Christian pastor, an African-American, I don't know his name, joined a debate. And Piers Morgan says to that African-American Christian pastor, he asked him, is this war between Israel and Iran religious? Because this was the theme of the whole Piers Morgan show. Is this war between Israel and Iran? Is the Middle East conflict religious? Now, to me and to most of you watching this video, the answer is an obvious yes. But here, this blind pastor, who I assume has a large following, or else he wouldn't have been interviewed by Piers Morgan, says, no, nothing particularly religious about it. And my answer to him is, hello, here's another fact that it's religious. The missile that Iran launched at Israel yesterday is a religiously named missile, Khybar. The Khybar missile is named after a famous battle that took place between Muhammad, the founder of Islam, and a Jewish village or town in the Arabian Peninsula called Khybar. It happened in the year 628 AD, in the beginning of Islam's history. And Muhammad went to basically go to war with these Jews. And after he defeats them, okay, now, by the way, what were these Jews doing there in the Arabian Peninsula? Well, evidently after our temple was destroyed, Herod's temple, okay, in 70 AD, as you know, many Jews fled the country, some westward, some eastward, and evidently many southward to what is the Arabian Peninsula. And by Muhammad's day, there were several Jewish towns and cities, I mean, larger than villages, major Jewish settlement in the Arabian Peninsula. Now, Muhammad tried to get these Jews in the Arabian Peninsula to accept that he is the prophet prophesied by Moses. If you remember, Moses gave a prophecy back in the Torah that said, a prophet will come after me, and you're to listen to this man, and anybody who doesn't listen to this man, God shall hold accountable. Some Christians believe that was a prophecy of the coming of Jesus. Some Jews believe that that was a prophecy concerning every prophet that would come after Moses. In other words, that Moses is a paradigm for all successive prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel. And if we don't listen to them as Jews, we'll be held accountable. And the Muslims cited that particular verse to say, look, here's Muhammad being prophesied in your Torah. Accept him as the final prophet. And the Jews didn't accept him. So Muhammad goes to war with this particular town of Jews called Khybar, defeats them, subdues them, okay, kills several of them, many others flee, and those that remain, he submits to the tax known as the Jizya. The Jizya is a special tax that Jews and Christians living in Sharia-run countries to this day, including Iran, are forced to pay year to year for protection. It's sort of what I would call the bully tax. It's like the kid that bullies you in school as a kid and says, give me your lunch money or I'll beat you up. You give him your lunch money and he doesn't beat you up for the next week, okay? And each week you have to renew this covenant with the bully by giving him your lunch money. That's what this tax is in Islam. It's called the Jizya. And Sharia-run countries, such as Iran, still go by this to this very day. The Jewish community in Iran, the Christian community in Iran must pay the Jizya. In this war of Khybar against the Jews were defeated. Again, many were killed. Those that remained were forced to pay this tax, and that became the paradigm for Jewish submission and subordination to Islam. And ever since the war on October 7 broke out with Hamas's attack on the Jews, you will hear the following chant in New York and in London and in Chicago and elsewhere of these pro-Palestinian supporters, many of whom are Muslim themselves, chanting, Khybar Khybar ya Yahood, Khybar Khybar ya Yahood. It's these protesters' way of citing that major event in the history of Islam and the Jews, telling the Jews that the Muslims will succeed to subordinate us again under their dominion. For why is Islam opposed to Israel's existence? Because the very rebirth of this country in 1948 was a slap to the honor of Islam. The Jews and Christians are meant to be subordinated to Islam. To exist is supposedly tolerated minorities, okay, but only tolerated if they pay that tax that I just mentioned to you called the Jizya. In addition to the tax, Jews and Christians are not to be able to build houses of worship. No synagogue, no church, excuse me, can be built if it didn't exist before Islam. Okay, in other words, no new synagogues, no new churches. Before the invention of the car, Jews and Christians were not allowed to own horses, but they were only allowed to ride donkeys to remind them of their humility, okay, of their debasement before the Muslim who was allowed to ride horses. Jews and Christians were not allowed to walk on the sidewalks. Let's say if a Muslim was approaching their way, they'd have to get off the sidewalk to lower themselves into the street. Sometimes, Jews in particular were made to wear special clothing to distinguish them from Muslims. That famous yellow star that that famous yellow star that the Nazis employed during World War II to distinguish the Jews from the Gentiles, that, my friends, was invented by the Muslims. Okay, that's a Muslim invention. So the recreation of Israel, folks, was a major slap in the face of the Muslims. For not only did the infidel Jews become independent in the heart of what the Muslims believe is Islamic soil, okay, but those same Jews started to kick their rear ends in wars and humiliate the Muslims. And Islam will never be able to regain their sense of honor and pride until Israel is destroyed. The Arab-Israeli conflict, folks, is at its heart and always has been an Islamic jihad against an infidel Jewish state existing in the Islamic heartland of the Middle East. It's that simple. It is a religious conflict, and one of Iran's missiles screams that from the skies as it's careening towards Tel Aviv, the missile being named after the Battle of Khybar, in which Muhammad subdued the Jews, subdued us until, of course, we threw off the shackles of our subduing in 1948. I'll wrap up this video, the longest of my updates yet, by saying that when Israel was refounded, rebirthed in 1948, it was the greatest act of decolonization in world history. For in that one rebirth, the 1948 war, Israel threw off the shackles of two colonies, the British Empire and the Islamic Empire, the two of them at one go. And therefore, in my opinion, the rebirth of Israel should go down as the greatest act of decolonization, as opposed to what these leftist whores of the Muslim fanatics claim. Anyway, folks, this was my largest update, and I left out all the technical facts about America's attack on Iran because it's already out there for those of you who are willing to sift through the facts and the media, okay, now that the dust has settled. So instead, I chose to give you my own unique historical perspective and context on what's happening. God bless the United States. God bless President Trump. God bless the state of Israel. God bless Benjamin Netanyahu. These men may be deeply flawed, and yet for such a time as this, God has used them, folks. There's no other way to understand that if you have a biblical view of the world, as most of us do. This is Steve, the tour guide, signing off. Bye-bye. Have a great day.